The way love used to feel. Elena had stopped believing in coffee shop meet cutes around the same time she stopped believing in a lot of things. At 38, she had learned that real life was grocery lists and mortgage payments, and the particular exhaustion that comes from picking up the pieces of a life that hadn't turned out the way you'd imagine when you were 22 and everything felt possible. But every morning, she still walked the same route to the school where she worked, past the little cafe with hand-painted signs and mismatched chairs visible through rain-streaked windows. Sometimes, despite herself, she would slow her steps and remember what it felt like to believe that magic could happen in ordinary places. The morning everything changed was the kind of October day that makes you ache for something you can't name, when the light falls golden through bare branches and the air smells like wood smoke and endings. Elena's umbrella was broken, and she stood shivering outside the cafe, watching people inside wrapped around steaming mugs like they were holding pieces of contentment. She pushed open the door because she was cold, she told herself, not because anything else. "You look like you have been walking through the rain," said the man behind the counter, and his voice was warm in a way that made Elena's chest tighten with something she'd almost forgotten how to feel. "Thomas," he told her name was Thomas, and he made her coffee with the kind of attention she remembered from before love became something you had to work at instead of something that simply was. He asked her how she liked her coffee, and when she said, "Surprise me," he smiled like she'd given him a gift. The coffee tasted like cinnamon and possibility. Elena sat by the window, and for 20 minutes she wasn't a woman whose marriages ended with lawyers and silences. She was just someone drinking coffee on a beautiful morning, watching Thomas move behind the counter with the unconscious grace of someone who loved what he did. She came back the next day and the next, not because she was falling in love. Elena had taught herself not to believe in that particular foolishness anymore, but because Thomas made her coffee like it mattered, and he looked at her like she was someone worth seeing. "I used to paint," she told him one morning when the cafe was empty, except for the two of them and the soft jazz playing from speakers tucked between books and handmade shelves. "What did you paint?" Thomas asked, refilling her cup without being asked. "Everything," Elena said, surprised by the sadness in her own voice. "I thought I was going to paint everything." Thomas was quiet for a moment, wiping down the counter with movement that seemed too careful. "What stopped you?" Elena laughed, but it came out wrong. Life, I guess. Bills and mortgages, and the way dreams start to feel selfish when you're trying to build something real with someone else. "And what if dreams aren't selfish?" Thomas asked gently. "What if they're just postponed?" That night, Elena went home to her small apartment, the one she'd moved to after the divorce, the one that still felt temporary after 2 years. and found her old easel in the closet. She set it up by the window and started to paint. She stared at the canvas until the tears came, surprising her, delighting her. She painted Thomas's coffee shop. Not perfectly, not the way she would have when she was young and believed she could capture everything, but with a trembling honesty of someone who had learned that imperfection could be its own kind of beauty. The next morning, she brought the painting to the cafe, wrapped in old newspapers, because she didn't have proper covering for it anymore. "Oh, I can't accept this," Thomas said, but his hands were already reaching for it, and his eyes were bright in a way that made Elena remember what it felt like to give someone something that mattered. It's not very good," Elena said, but she was smiling, really smiling, for the first time in months. "It's perfect," Thomas said. And when he hung it on the wall behind the counter, Elena felt something she thought was gone forever. The flutter of possibility, the whisper that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late for beautiful things to happen. They did not fall in love the way people do in movies. They fell in love the way two people do in real life, slowly, carefully, with the full knowledge of what love costs and what it's worth. Thomas had been divorced too, had his own collection of disappointments and late-night doubts. But in the golden light of the cafe, with Elena's painting on the wall and her hands wrapped around the coffee he made just for her, they found something that felt like a second chance. On the morning Thomas first kissed her, a soft, tentative kiss that tasted like coffee and courage, Elena closed her eyes and felt 22 again, not because she'd forgotten everything she'd learned since then, but because she remembered what it felt like to believe that love didn't have to be perfect to be real. They were married the following spring, in the cafe, surrounded by Elena's paintings and the friends who had watched them find each other. Elena wore a simple dress from boutique downtown, not white because she was past the age of pretending that this was her first chance at forever, but cream-colored like morning light. Sometimes, when Elena wakes up in a small apartment above the cafe that had become their home, she watches Thomas make coffee in the early morning light and thinks about the girl she used to be, the one who believed love would be easily and permanent and exactly like in the movies. She doesn't miss that girl, but she treasures her home. Because Elena learned something that 22-year-old Elena could not have understood. Sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin not with innocence, but with a choice to believe in beauty again, even after you've learned exactly how much it can hurt. I hope you enjoy this story. I hope you remember what it felt like to believe in forever. And I hope you learned something. I hope you learned that sometimes the most precious things are the ones we find after we thought we'd stop looking. Believe in love.